This is Mill Street Radio from PRX. I'm your host, Christopher Kimball. It's our annual Thanksgiving special, and we're dedicating the hour to solving your toughest problems, like what to do when your apple pie leaks.
I love a pie that bubbles over, personally.
As long as it doesn't get all over your oven.
We figure out how to make a turkey in just 2 hours.
For those people who pop that turkey in at 10 a.m. and 3 o'clock, you're still sitting there waiting for it to be done. This is a great option.
Plus, we'll get a Thanksgiving poetry reading from Adam Gopnik.
The perpetual themes of the best poetry of food are, I think, Christopher, the themes of American Thanksgiving.
That's all coming up later on the show, but to start us off, I'm joined by Food Network star Jet Tila to answer some of your cooking questions. Hey, Jet, welcome back to Mill Street.
Chris, what an honor to be here, man. It really feels like Thanksgiving now that I'm on with you.
Well, I had to have you back because you have to answer all the questions I can't answer. It'd be very helpful.
I don't believe that. I'm here for comic relief because you're the sage and I'm the comic sidekick to the sage.
It's a good pairing.
Oh, hey, I'm just happy to be riding shotgun with you, man. Let's do this.
Let's take a call.
Welcome to Milk Street. Who's calling?
Hi, this is Victoria calling from Beverly, Massachusetts.
Hi, Victoria.
Hi there.
How can we help you today?
I'm looking for side dish inspiration for Thanksgiving while taking into account a range of dietary restrictions and personalities. Every year, yeah, definitely.
I know the list already. You don't even have to tell me.
I heard the grumble from Chris' side.
Well, there's dairy-free, vegan, right now.
Yeah. What are some of your challenges? Yeah, I think we all can commiserate.
Yep, you are right there. You're hitting the big hits. My brother is vegan and straight edge. My now sister-in-law eats meat but cannot eat gluten or dairy, and we work to avoid soy if possible. My parents and uncle have no restrictions, but they are a little less adventurous, and they're definitely more sensitive to spice heat. And then there's me and my husband, no restrictions, and we're quite adventurous. And I would love any inspiration that comes to mind for you.
Oh, boy. When did this get so complicated?
Really?
Okay, first category are traditional things with different flavorings. So sweet potato casserole flavor with bay leaves and vanilla, for example, a recipe we did a couple years ago. It's a little different, but it's not wildly different. Roasting whole heads of cauliflower or cabbage is another thing you can do. We have lots of recipes for that. All sorts of things you can put on it, like tahini, etc. I had a roasted cabbage in Tel Aviv a couple of years ago with a scrodalia sauce, sort of a potato white sauce, which was outstanding. Charring, like charred Brussels sprouts, get a really good char in them. You could do it in a cast iron skillet, or you could do it in a skillet and then throw it in the oven with a simple spices, a dressing of some kind, a vinaigrette or other dressing on it. Those are just a few things you can do. That would be nice as well. Jet?
I think it's just a sign of the modern times. I think all of us cooks are always, we're wanting to accommodate our guests and keep them really happy. But I'm listening and really vibing on what Chris is saying. First, I think what wins is cooking to that kind of plant-based, because most of that will knock out dairy, that'll knock out meat. And then what I like to do is make sure my guests that have restrictions have a centerpiece, because they can't, oh man, I can't eat that turkey, I can't eat that gravy. So I'm roasting like kabocha squash. I'm roasting some really great Japanese yams. And then I'm using kind of plant-based cheeses nowadays. Like there's a lot of ricottas out there. There's a lot of, wonderful kind of creamy creme fraiche kind of things. And I'm also cooking things that have a lot of inherent sweetness and flavor. And then we're bringing in alums, chutneys, leeks. So I think putting together these kind of, star pieces so your guests with restrictions feel special, but you're not killing yourself. And a lot of these roasted items and grilled and char items can be done way ahead of time. And, also cauliflower steaks, I'm doing a lot. So cutting them into like 3-4 inch wide entire sections, breadcrumbs, roasting them, finishing them in the oven, and then applying some plant-based fats, butters, etc. You're really going to create a special experience for all your guests that way. And you're going to nail all the restrictions.
I think Odo Lengi, in one of his first books, took butternut squash, cut it into big, thick rounds, like inch-thick rounds, and roasted it with spices, all those great spices. Instead of doing a squash casserole, it's just an easy way to do something different. And then maybe you put a little yogurt on it or labneh or something with spices to finish.
Yeah, Ottolenghi and then Tal Ronin, the Crossroads cookbook, which is a full plant-based cookbook. Those two, you would get a ton of ideas. That would be fantastic.
And the other book, The Six Seasons, remember that one?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
The one that James Beard a few years ago for vegetarian vegetable recipes. That's a really good book.
Amazing. These are fantastic ideas, and I especially love those squash-based. Those are things that are just so popular within everybody in the family. So being able to have it be something that is special for those guests and also something that's accessible for everybody else. I'm really excited about these ideas.
Or you could just put miniature marshmallows on everything. That's the other, I mean, you could really just dive into the deep end and go for it.
Go all in.
Absolutely.
Well, I was doing that sweet potato casserole a couple of weeks ago in the office, and I was going like, I kind of miss those marshmallows. I do and I don't. I mean, I really wanted to just trash it up at the end and just go for it.
I think that makes Thanksgiving, brother.
It's like, this is where I came from.
Yeah, exactly right.
These are my people, the marshmallow people.
I am one of those people.
Except Victoria's going to grab the vegan marshmallows.
Victoria, hopefully you'll have a great Thanksgiving.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate these ideas, and I hope you have a great Thanksgiving as well.
Happy Thanksgiving. Happy holidays.
Take care. Thank you.
Welcome to Milk Street. Who's calling?
Hi, this is Jamie.
Hi, Jamie. How can we help you?
This year, I'm celebrating Thanksgiving just with my husband. And so we are looking forward to just having the whole 4 days to cook, eat, and relax. I was wondering if you had any ideas of a project that we can take on. And we're looking for something maybe a little non-traditional, a little adventurous.
For desserts, that's really where you get into a project. I've done steam puddings, for Christmas or the holidays, which I really love. They take time to steam, but not too much time to put together. Or do, a French apple tart with thinly sliced apples, or do something with puff pastry. And finally, gougere, that's little choux pastry that you make eclairs out of. You add cheese to that and nuts, and that's something to eat with wine. Jet, you probably have some better ideas than mine.
I doubt they're better, but your question, it resonates because I think everyone is like, oh my God, I've done 100 Thanksgivings. What do I do differently? I'll give you just a few things that we do in the Tila home. So if you really want a project, research Ballantine. I really love doing Ballantines because it's basically taking the bones out of the turkey, creating a stuffing instead of a dressing, putting the stuffing in, and imagine, if you will, rolling, the best parts, the skin, the white meat, the dark meat around, and making almost like a roll, right? Stitching it together.
Yeah.
And then when you roast that and you pull it out of the oven, one slice of Ballantine has everything in it, the crispy skin, the meat, and the dressing all in, and then you create your favorite gravies. I think gravy is an essential, in my opinion.
I'd also suggest going on YouTube and watching Jacques Pepin bone a chicken.
Yes.
I was going to ask,
Yes.
how am I going to do this?
I mean, with the way he does that, he does it in 2 minutes and he doesn't break a sweat.
He's such a master. And, I think it's a really fun project. And because you have 4 days, you're assuring yourself some good success instead of trying to do it the night before.
Those all sound exciting.
That's at least 4 days of work right there, right? So,
I was going to say, I think I'm going to do gougeres one day,
Yeah.
and then I'll be able to snack on those while I'm making the balance.
those aren't hard, by the way. Those are easy.
Get some sweet potatoes going in the mix. It will all be fantastic.
Just tell us when to come over because you're going to have a pretty rock star Thanksgiving.
All right.
Jamie, have a great Thanksgiving.
Thank you so much. You too.
Yeah, our pleasure. This is Milk Street Radio. If you need help in the kitchen this holiday season, give us a call anytime. Our number, 855-426-9843. One more time, 855-426-9843. Or simply email us at questions@milkstreetradio.com. Welcome to Milk Street. Who's calling?
Hi, my name is Kelly.
Hi, Kelly. How are you?
I'm awesome. How are you?
I'm good. How about that? That's 2 steps below awesome. So how can we help you?
Well, I was wondering, for Thanksgiving, what's the minimum dishes that I need to make? Because I always end up going overboard and making way too much. What is the minimum?
That's a great question. I think about this every year, and I've actually managed to pare it down. So my list is turkey, mashed potatoes, gravy, which I think is probably the most important thing almost, and a cranberry relish, which is the recipe on the back of the bag with a little salt added. Those 4 things seem to me to be essential, and then throw in maybe one vegetable of some kind. We can move on to dessert later, but what is your short list?
I don't have a short list. That's the problem. My list is long.
Well, you kill yourself for 2 or 3 days cooking, and you get 9 things sitting on the table, and 3 of the things barely get touched. And you feel afterwards like, well, why did I go to all that trouble? Are there dishes that your family absolutely demands you make?
Sometimes it's, well, you didn't make grandma's cranberry relish.
Oh.
So they're not going to eat it. Or I did make the things that they would eat every year, and they're like, we don't want those. We eat those every year.
Oh, you got a tough crowd here.
Yeah, we're going to have to make some decisions here.
I sort of feel like I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to cook for you. I'm going to make this a nice meal. I don't need to have everybody check off all the boxes on everything. I just don't worry about it anymore. Maybe because I'm just getting old. But, Chet, I mean, I would bet you're not getting permission to leave a dish off the menu.
Yeah,
right?
Amen to that, Chris. Kelly, hi, by the way.
Hi.
A couple questions. How many people are you expecting for Thanksgiving?
Well, when it's my house, like, let's say less than 10.
Okay. I think Chris nailed it on get your bases covered. We talked about, obviously, a turkey. I mean, you need cranberry. You need gravy. I think you need a dressing if you're not stuffing. And then maybe one classic. But I'm always looking at it like, how many guests am I serving? And under 10, I don't think you need to make more than 5, 6 dishes, because now you can get into the weeds and be like, do we need rolls? Do I need a appetizer? Because we aren't even talking about dessert.
We haven't even talked about dessert,
Right?
which
We
is
haven't
where
even
I
gone
have
there.
absolutely no control whatsoever.
Do you make it all, Chris? Do you do dessert
Yes.
and the dinner?
I cook everything, and I make 3 pies, pecan, pumpkin, and apple, and, by the way, trifle.
Trifle as well.
Yeah,
That's
because
your
some of my
tradition, yeah.
kids just demand trifle. So
That's
I do.
hardcore right there.
I got 4 dishes after the main meal, which I can't get rid of.
Yeah, that sounds about right for Thanksgiving. You know, another thing I also do, Kelly, is we do a group chat or we do a group email. And I'm like, this is what I'm planning to make. And hold your peace or tell me what you want. And if there's a lot of redundancies, I'm like, you know what? Take a vote. If I don't hear from you, guess what? You're going to have a great meal and you're going to be thankful for this gathering. And I don't want to hear it anymore. You're the boss.
I like the voting option. I appreciate that. Sometimes what's difficult is the stuff that I like isn't always what everybody else likes. I like some of the old stuff, like there's a green Jell-O salad that I really like, that's got pineapple, that really concentrated pineapple and lime flavor that I made one year and I took to a potluck Thanksgiving that I didn't know my friend's family, she married into a Mexican family. And so they had mostly a lot of Mexican foods, and I show up with this green Jell-O salad and nobody ate it.
Yeah. And Kelly, are you a people pleaser or are you like, hey, you're going to deal with what I make? Which personality type are you?
You know what? Both. I'm a recovering doormat, so I'm kind of overcoming the people pleasing. But, I do like my people to be happy, and enjoy their time with me. And I also cook everything, Chris. I love it until I don't.
Let me just give you something I've observed, because I used to sweat it out back in the 70s and 80s. And I'd cook all day, and I was worried that everyone would love everything. And then I discovered that the next day, everybody forgot about the meal, right? And all that's left over is this glow, this afterglow of whether they had a good time. It's all in the moment. You're doing the cooking. It's your house. You're buying the groceries. I think you should just own your menu and do what you like. And, look, I mean, you're hosting Thanksgiving. So it's a massive amount of time, money, work, effort. So if you like green Jell-O with pineapple and lime, good for you.
I appreciate that, because we didn't even talk about like the deviled egg situation.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't know. Make the Jell-O.
Oh, I'm totally going to. Thank
Good
you.
for
I
you.
appreciate your support. I'm going to tell them that you said it was okay and they can shut up about it.
You can blame Jed and
Absolutely.
I.
All day long.
Kelly, it's been a pleasure.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
I appreciate you both. Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a good holiday.
You too.
This is Milk Street Radio, and that was Chef Jet Tila. His latest book is 101 Thai Dishes You Need to Cook Before You Die. Last year, Jed and I spoke with a caller who made a pretty bold claim about how fast he could roast a turkey.
It cooks in 45 minutes.
No.
It cooks in 45 minutes? How big is the bird?
It's above 15. Usually it's about 18.
What?
Wait, and you haven't spatchcocked it. You're saying a whole bird cooks in 45 minutes?
The whole bird cooks in 45 minutes. Yeah.
Jen and I couldn't believe it, so I asked Wes Martin from our kitchen at Milk Street to investigate. Hey, Wes, how are you?
I'm doing great, Chris. How about you?
Good. As you know, most of our callers are really good cooks, and I actually learned something from them. But you tried to do a 45-minute turkey, so how did that work out for you?
Yeah, so we all had our doubts about it, but, why not give it a try? So we went about it a couple times just to see what we could figure out. First, we started with a whole bird, just salted it. I stuffed some aromatics into the cavity, and we cranked that oven. We have home ovens here at Milk Street. They do go up to 550 degrees, and they've got a convection setting. So we stuck a thermometer in there, and we were at about 550 in the internal temperature of the oven. Put it in there and gave it a shot, and we were not even close. At 45 minutes, we were only at 99 degrees internal temperature. We had some thermometers stuck all over that bird. It was a little science experiment, and we kept on going, and it took well over 2 hours to get that whole bird roasted. So we went back to the drawing board, thought, well, why don't we spatchcock? If we cut that backbone out, level out the plane of the turkey so it's all kind of the same thickness, and try it again. And we got it down to about 1 hour and 25 in this case. But the skin and the tendons were pulling away from the bone, and the leg meat was really dry and leathery by the time the breast was cooked. So that oven was too hot. So we're not sure what he was working with, but we found that it did not work here at Milk Street.
Yeah, but I have to say, you did something that almost nobody's ever been able to do, is to turn dark meat on a turkey completely dry and overcooked. It's usually undercooked. But at least there's some good news here, which is instead of 3, 4, 5 hours, we are roasting a turkey in much less time. So then what did we do? I mean, we still wanted to do it quickly, but what did we do to make it tasty?
Well, we thought we would run with this because though we knew it wouldn't cook in 45 minutes, within a short amount of time, we got it cooked. Now, we decided to lower the temperature a little bit, drop it down to 425. Did not use the convection setting. We just a regular oven. Same thing, spatchcocked the turkey, cut that backbone out, snapped the breastbone so it laid flat, salted it the night before, did a dry brine. And at 425, we did get a 14-pound turkey just under 2 hours to temp. Still juicy, still delicious. We didn't dry out the drumstick meat. And so for those people who pop that turkey in at 10 a.m. and 3 o'clock, you're still sitting there waiting for it to be done, this is a great, great option.
Yeah, the spatchcocking evens out the cooking. I spent years doing turkeys breast side up, then breast side down, breast side down, breast side up. Change the temperature halfway through because the breast meat tends to get overcooked before the dark meat's done. That dark meat in a turkey, because the legs are so much bigger, all the tendons and other ligaments and stuff, you really want to cook those legs fully, not just to 170, probably higher.
Yeah.
You said dry brining, so we should just say it now. Wet brining's dead. You got to get a beer cooler or a garbage can or something.
Yeah.
It probably doesn't fit in your fridge properly. But it turns out the dry brining, which, sprinkle the spatchcock bird with salt, let it sit uncovered in the fridge overnight, you get as much flavor, you get as much juiciness. It's easier. And I have to say, a wet brine turkey, it kind of feels like luncheon meat to me. It's wet. It can be wet.
Yeah.
Dry brining, it's not. It has more chew, it has more texture, but you're not losing juiciness. And I think we should just take wet brining and put that into the annals of culinary history and forget about it.
I agree. And I think people think magically that the longer you leave it in that wet brine, the better and more moist that turkey's going to be. It's quite the opposite. So dry brining is the way to go. You get a beautiful, crisp skin. It's much less messy. You can put that thing in the pan you're going to roast it in the refrigerator, and be ready to go the next day.
So 425 oven, spatchcock bird, dry brined overnight in the fridge, uncovered, in and out of the oven in 2 hours. And the white meat and the dark meat end up being perfectly cooked at the same time. You did it. Wes, thank you very much, and happy Thanksgiving.
My pleasure. Happy Thanksgiving to you too, Chris.
You can get the recipe for 2-hour turkey, plus a collection of our favorite Thanksgiving recipes at milkstreetradio.com/Thanksgiving.
Hi, everybody. I'm Al Roker from The Today Show. You're listening to Milk Street Radio. And, well, Thanksgiving. Everybody has, their ideal Thanksgiving in their mind. And I think the best Thanksgiving is the one that you feel the most comfortable with. I, for the longest time, have made Thanksgiving dinner. And plus, I also have the extra added responsibility of doing the Thanksgiving Day Parade with my Today Show co-hosts, Savannah Guthrie and Hoda Kotb. And then I would prep everything the night before. My wife, Deborah Roberts, would put things in on a schedule, and then we'd get home, and then everybody'd show up, and then we'd cook, and then I would just be exhausted. And about 10 years ago, Danielle Ballud invited us to Thanksgiving dinner. I'd never thought about going out to dinner. It just seemed just against the whole idea of Thanksgiving, and went, and it was fantastic. So if somebody invites you to Thanksgiving dinner, whether it's at a restaurant or at somebody else's home, you know what? Take it. Just allow yourself an afternoon/evening of nothing to give thanks for, that you don't have to cook, and even more importantly, you don't have to clean.
You're listening to Milk Street Radio. Up next, it's time for my favorite part of Thanksgiving, dessert. This is Milk Street Radio. I'm your host, Christopher Kimball. It's time to talk dessert. Cheryl Day joins me now to answer some of your Thanksgiving baking questions. So, Cheryl, over my lifetime, I've gone into Thanksgiving wanting different things. At one time, it was just about how many recipes could I possibly make, show off my cooking.
Right.
I gave that up a long time ago. The other is just to be with family. Some years it was all about what happened after dinner was over. Do you have a part of Thanksgiving which for you is really the key part you look forward to the most? Maybe it's the prep and the cooking before anybody shows up.
I do love all the prep, and I love, just the tradition of pretty much making the same things. I, like you, have given up trying to do too much. But then there's one recipe that every year I am just always trying to make it be like my mom's and make it better. And I haven't gotten there yet.
What is it?
It is a cornbread stuffing or dressing.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes I can't find the ingredients that, she used. It's one of those old family recipes. Of course it's not written down, but every year I'm like, oh, yeah. And Griff will say, yeah, you're getting there. But we all know what that means.
I've done that. I make it from scratch. I bake it in a baking sheet, let it cool, cut it into pieces. Then I have to put it back in the oven to toast it. And then it is a time-consuming recipe.
It is. Anyway, I just love the fun of, I have my Christmas music on at that point, and I do love the process.
You know what would make the perfect Thanksgiving for me? I had a sister-in-law years ago. You were never allowed to have coffee and dessert until everything was cleaned up. For any dinner. It was really nice. It's like Lawrence of Arabia. There's a little intermission, Especially Thanksgiving, you're so stuffed. And then there's cleaning up and everything else, and the kitchen's clean, and everything's put away, and you're sitting down, and it's been 45 minutes, and then you can, make the coffee and have the pie. I think that's really a nice way to segue, because otherwise there are plates all over the place, and the sink's full, and the pies come out. You don't get a chance to really, as I would put it, honor, the pies, which clearly are my favorite part of Thanksgiving.
Yeah, well, that is a great part. One of my faves, too.
Okay, so we need Thanksgiving intermissions. That's what we need.
There you go.
All right, let's take a call.
Welcome to Milk Street. Who's calling?
Hi, this is Melanie.
Hi, Melanie. Where are you calling from?
I am in Louisville, Kentucky.
All right. Well, how can we help you today?
I have a question about when you're cooking a pie or a cobbler or something that has the potential to leak out of the pan. Do you put a pan or foil directly on the shelf under the pie, or do you go to the next shelf down? And how does that affect the baking? of whatever it is you're cooking?
I mean, I just put it on a piece of parchment or foil directly on the pan. I know some folks do put it underneath. If you're baking a lot of pies and you kind of want that heat from the pan, but in the case of just making a pie at home, I just put it directly on. And I love a pie that bubbles over, personally, a fruit pie.
As long as it doesn't get all over your oven.
Exactly, as long as it doesn't get all over your oven. So that's what I do. What do you do, Chris?
Yeah, I do the same thing. But, it's a good question. I've always asked myself whether the half baking sheet I put it on is going to slow down the heat to the bottom of the pie plate, because the baking sheet's at room temperature, right? And the oven's at 375 or 400. And so it's going to take time for that baking sheet to heat up. One thing I have done, which doesn't solve the problem of boilovers, is put a pie plate directly on a baking steel that's preheated in the oven.
Oh, I see.
You could also, Chris, sometimes I'll put the pan in the oven too, if you don't have a steel.
Yeah, and that'll probably give you a better bottom crust. But in general, I would bake pies on the lowest rack to get that bottom crust brown properly. I tend to do that. But I think it's fine. Just throw it in a half baking sheet. Maybe some parchment papers, will help to clean up a little bit if there's a boil over. But I also agree that a boil over is good, because you really want that filling to start boiling to melt the sugar, and it just adds a lot of flavor.
And to answer your question, Melanie, about the time, it's not going to take as much time as it would take you, or extra time, to clean that oven. So it's worth it.
Good point.
It's true.
Melanie, thank you.
Well, thank you for your help.
Thanks, Melanie.
Bye.
This is Milk Street Radio. If you have a pie emergency, just give us a ring anytime, 855-426-9843. One more time, 855-426-9843. Or please email us at questions@milkstreetradio.com.
Hi, welcome to Milk Street. Who's calling?
Hi, this is Dia. I'm in South Carolina.
Hi, Dia. How can we help you today?
I tried to make my grandmother's recipe for cheesecake, which has got to be 100 years old. And I'm not sure whether it's a cheesecake issue or a cheese issue, because the recipe starts with 2 pounds of pot cheese. It includes 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, 6 eggs, 1 3/4 cups of sugar, 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla, and a pint of heavy cream.
Okay.
And baked at 425 for a half an hour, and then 400 with no additional time given.
Okay.
I made the cheese because I couldn't find pot cheese. After 15 minutes in the oven at 425, and I have an accurate oven thermometer.
Great.
The top was very brown. After the half an hour, the top was black.
I bet.
Yeah, I took it out early. It only baked for a half an hour and was the consistency, when it cooled, more of a Spanish-style flan.
Oh, wow.
It was like a custard more than anything else.
How do you recall Gran's cheesecake? Was it a dark-colored cheesecake or not?
It was not black.
Okay. Because there is a Basque cheesecake, and that's kind of a signature look for that, but it doesn't sound like that. For the pot cheese, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but is that similar to like a cottage cheese or like a ricotta?
Yeah, it's just a fresh, unaged farmer's cheese, right? Like Quark
right.
or something.
But what strikes me is the no stirring with the heavy cream. And does it say to let it sit out overnight, or does it age at all, or just pour it straight in?
No, it was just stir it, don't beat it, and pour it in the pan.
Okay, well, that's the first thing that stands out to me that seems odd. And then also the temperature seems extremely high. When I bake my cheesecake just with regular cream cheese, and I've made it with, ricotta and other things too, I do start at a high temperature at 400, but like 5 minutes, just to get it to kind of bounce up. But then it cooks low and slow at 225 for, about an hour or so, maybe 65 minutes even. Because basically it sounds like it didn't really have an opportunity to really turn into that filling that you want with a cheesecake style. What do you think, Chris?
I agree with the 425 down. You can do it at 425 and then bring it down to like 250 to 300 or whatever. That should solve the problem. But chilling the filling might also help. How much sugar was in it, by the way?
1 3/4 cups.
It sounds a little much, but, for 2 pounds of cheese, 1.5 cups of sugar is pretty standard. Anyway, I would do what Cheryl says, which is reduce the temperature after a few minutes, or I would chill the filling first.
Would the homemade pot cheese have made a difference? I mean, I used whole milk and vinegar, and it was not ultra-pasteurized milk. It curdled nicely. It looked like cottage cheese when I made it.
Oh, wow.
Well, there's a trick in baking that Cheryl knows, which for like cookies, adding some baking soda increases browning. And so baking soda is alkaline. So it's possible the pH, for some reason, of this cheese is much higher. The higher the number, the more alkaline, less acidic it is. It may be that that does cause browning, because it does in cookies, right, Cheryl? I mean,
right, exactly.
That's an old trick. It's possible. I don't know the chemistry of it, but that is a possibility. Anyway, I would follow Cheryl's advice. Do what Cheryl says.
I think it's worth giving it a try. One more try.
I'll give it one more try.
All right. Thanks for calling.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Milk Street. Who's calling?
Hi, this is Jen Jost. I'm calling from Peoria, Illinois.
How can we help you?
I just want to say that Milk Street has literally changed my life. I cook 5 to 6 nights a week from Milk Street recipes.
Really?
Yeah, honestly. My husband bought the cookbook for me. We both grew up with houses that knew how to cook but didn't know how to use bold flavors.
Right.
And it has been life-changing for us.
I grew up in a household. My mother, I don't think she even used salt. We didn't have flavorings, much less bold flavorings. So I've gone 180.
Wow.
Anyway, what's your question?
We have a local bakery in town that's been fairly groundbreaking, and they brought a lot of really nice pastries to town. And in their little refrigerated section, they sell Plugra butter. I had never heard of it before, but I've since learned that it has higher butter fat in it, and it's great for pastry. My husband and I are thinking of incorporating it into our Thanksgiving pies this year, and we're wondering if we need a specific pie crust recipe designed for using Plugra, or if we can just substitute it out one for one.
I spoke with Stella Parks, who wrote Brave Tart years ago, and I asked her about this, and she had a really interesting answer. She said, if a recipe calls for, a standard like Land O'Lakes American-style butter, use the American-style butter, because that's how the recipe was developed. If you put in a higher fat butter, like in a cake, for example, it could change the recipe. However, in a pie pastry, I'd be perfectly fine. You're going from 81 or 82% butter fat to, Cheryl, 83 or 4 or something like that.
Yeah.
But yes, it's not a problem. But in cakes or other things, do what the recipe developer did, because you have a better chance of success. But pie dough, absolutely.
It's great in pie dough. I love that butter.
Okay.
Well, European-style butter, bakers just do. I'm a Southern baker, too, so I tend to like the higher fat.
The fat difference isn't that great.
And it's delicious.
You're adding 3% butterfat or something. But yes, in a pie dough, it would be great.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was really amazing to talk to you.
Same.
Take care. That was Cheryl Day. Her latest book is Cheryl Day's Treasury of Southern Baking.
You're listening to Milk Street Radio, and this is Jacques Pepin. As a child in France, I never experienced Thanksgiving. It doesn't exist. But it has become my favorite holiday by far, and there is no religious implication. It's just getting together with friends to enjoy food and wine together, so this is the greatest of holidays. I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Happy cooking.
Coming up, our listeners share their most unusual Thanksgiving traditions. This is Milk Street Radio. I'm your host, Christopher Kimball. Next up, we have a literary offering from our friend Adam Gopnik. Adam, how are you?
I am fine, Christopher. How are you today?
You are in fine fettle.
I am. You can hear it in my voice because I love Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving is approaching, and it's my favorite time of year. I love the feast. I love the bringing together of people.
Well, there are no Thanksgiving cards. There are no Thanksgiving presents, and it's entirely about cooking and food. So what could possibly go wrong?
At our table, it is about cooking and it is about food, but I love particularly a little ritual that we have over the past 40 years, and that is we ask everybody who's coming to dinner to bring a poem with them. It can be a classic, it can be a limerick, but everyone has to bring a poem. And it's everybody's favorite moment of the feast, exactly because poetry organizes our emotions, and everyone is grateful between the turkey and the pumpkin pie to have a little reflective moment.
I think that is a great idea. So are these poems entirely about food?
No, they can be on any subject, but inevitably they tend towards poems about food. And I've assembled an elegant little anthology just to share with you. Now, the first one comes from the first great poet of all, Homer, of course. And this is from Homer's Odyssey, Book 1, when Athena dines with Telemachus in Robert Fagel's translation. A maid brought water soon in a graceful golden pitcher, and over a silver basin tipped it out, so they might all rinse their hands. Then pulled a gleaming table to their side. A staid housekeeper brought on bread to serve them. Appetizers aplenty, too, lavish with her bounty. A carver lifted platters of meat towards them, meats of every sort, and set beside them golden cups. And time and again a page came round and poured them wine.
Well, I'm, as you know, a Dickens fan. Christmas, the Pickwick, remember that whole thing?
Of course, at Dingley Dell.
At Dingley Dell. And I have to say, I just found that just so charming. And I actually read that around the holidays as well. It just really sums up for me the notion of celebration and food together. I don't know how you feel about it, but
I love the section at Dingley Dell. It's early on in the Pickwick Papers before it gets a little darker, but it was Dickens' first great hit. And yes, I love that. It's one of the coziest pieces of writing. It's funny you mentioned Dickens, though, and because he's a prose writer. And when I got to thinking about trying to find you something, Chris, from Shakespeare, I realized Shakespeare never writes poetry about food. He only writes prose about food. Now, someone will write in about some piece, but on the whole, that's true. He thinks of food as a prose subject, not a subject for verse. The only extended piece of prose I could find in Shakespeare about food comes from The Winter's Tale, Act 4, where the dullard, simple shepherd son goes on a shopping trip. He's been sent by his sister, Perdita, who you remember is the beautiful shepherdess, and she sent him to market with a list. And he reads out the list because it puzzles him. He's bewildered by it. And the list goes, 3 pounds of sugar, 5 pounds of currants, rice. What would this sister of mine do with rice? I must have saffron to color. Dates? None. That's out of my note. Nutmegs? 7. A race or 2 of ginger. 4 pounds of prunes and as many of raisins. Now, he's bewildered. What will this sister of mine do with rice? But I know, Chris, you can see right away what Perdita is planning to make for the upcoming sheep shearing festival.
Well, it's probably a Ripley's, believe it or not, rice pudding. Because it would probably be the largest one anyone ever prepared.
Yes, with 3 pounds of sugar and 5 pounds of currants. But I think that's exactly right. And anyone who's read Elizabeth Leward's book on sacred food will have exactly that same epiphany. Because as you recall, Leward makes the point that in every culture, it's essentially universal, we use some form of rice pudding, saffron, rice, nutmeg, to mark festivals, to mark all our rites of passage. And so it's lovely to find the bewildered shepherd who doesn't know what his sister is making.
So if you were to sum up Thanksgiving poetically for you, is it about memory? Is it about family? Is it about culture? How would you poetically describe Thanksgiving?
I think of 3 little poems that connect the feast of Thanksgiving to the broader values that we all want to share. The concept of pluralism, of welcoming many kinds, many faiths, many sorts to our table. And the other is the power of ritual to dignify our appetites. There's a beautiful little poem by Virgil, of all people, Homer's great Latin successor, called the Maritum, that's all about making pesto. And that poem ends, hand in circles move, till by degrees they one by one, he's talking about the ingredients, the cheese and the basil and so on, till by degrees they one by one do lose their proper powers, and out of many comes a single color. And you know, Chris, that's the source of the American motto, e pluribus unum, out of many one, comes from a recipe for pesto that Virgil wrote down 2,000 years plus ago. And not enough people know that. And I would add to that poem, to capture the true spirit, as I imagine it, of an American Thanksgiving, that great poem by William Carlos Williams, which I'm sure all of our listeners know. I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox, and which you were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me. They were delicious, so sweet and so cold. It's a husband writing to a wife in apology for sneaking something out of the refrigerator on the night before Thanksgiving, which I'm sure we've all done. And let me just end with a little piece of a poem by a friend of mine, the great American poet Jane Hirschfeld. She writes about how you cure a broken heart. And do you know how she recommends curing a broken heart?
Eating.
By making lentil soup and eating it. She writes, returning home, slice carrots, onions, celery. Glaze them in oil before adding the lentils, waters, and herbs. Then the roasted chestnuts, a little pepper, the salt. Finish with goat cheese and parsley. Eat. You may do this. I tell you, it is permitted. Begin again the story of your life.
Ooh, that's wonderful. I love that.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
Begin again the story of your life. It seems to me, Chris, that the perpetual themes of the poetry of food across the millennia are the themes of American Thanksgiving. The first one is renewal through ritual, that the rituals of dining are the source of our renewal, the care with which we make our meals. And as well, and that's the thing that Virgil's out of many comes one, is the pleasures of pluralism of every kind. Many dishes, many people, many kinds, many faiths, all together around a single table. Pluralism and renewal. Those are the two magical words of Thanksgiving. And I hope you have a happy one, Christopher.
And I want a pot of lentil soup to go
I will
with it,
send
please.
it north to you.
Adam, happy Thanksgiving to you too and your family. And I'm going to borrow your poetry concept this year and read poems at the table. Thank you.
That couldn't make me happier. Talk about renewal through ritual. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. That was Adam Gopnik, staff writer at The New Yorker. You're listening to Milk Street Radio. For this special episode, we invited our listeners to share their most unique Thanksgiving traditions. And we got this call from Norma Asbury of Fleming Island, Florida.
In 2009, my husband was preparing the turkey to go into the fryer. And that year, he spanked the turkey to kind of disperse the marinade. So he called us in and said, well, here, you guys do it too. So, of course, we washed our hands, and each of us gave the turkey a whack. That started our tradition of spanking the turkey. In 2011, in June, my husband died. The following year, all of us lined up and gave the turkey a whack. And on Reddit, when I posted that story, I had a lot of people who replied and said, hey, we want to do this too. What's your husband's name? And so I said, okay, everybody, if you want, we'd be very honored if you spank the turkey and say this is for Tony. And it's just something special to honor the big man who actually made the best fried turkey you've ever had in your life.
Many of you called to tell us your Thanksgiving rituals, from spanking turkeys to avoiding them altogether. Here are some of the stories you shared.
My family and I, every year while we're getting ready, we listen to Alice's Restaurant. I do not allow any talking. If people talk, it gets played again until there is silence, other than us all singing. You can get anything you want at Alice's Restaurant.
One of the things that we've done over the years will hide little paper turkeys all over the yard and all over the house. And the kids, the many of them, will then have a turkey hunt with Nerf guns.
For Thanksgiving, I always have a tradition of making a bread in the shape of a turkey. And I make the little gobble and put raisins for the eyes, and I'm well known in Knoxville, Tennessee for doing it.
Every year, my family has something called turkey nut cups, which are a little tiny cup on the side of our plate that's dressed up like a turkey. And in our little cup, we keep little treats that we can snack on during our meal, whether that's popcorn or chocolate or candies, whatever it might be.
I've been hosting a sit-down multi-course tasting menu. Nothing traditional is on the menu because we don't care for turkey. Last year, I was inspired to serve Coco's vol au vent, black walnut and venison consomme, braised beef cheeks with spätzle, and a butterscotch tart for dessert.
Pea salad consists of canned peas, hard-boiled eggs, green stuffed olives, and it's all mixed with mayonnaise, and it's been made for generations in our family. I tried to not do it one year, and everybody was very disappointed.
I borrowed my mother's extra pie dough and dressed our family turkey in a tuxedo and even gave it a bow tie, like the one that Christopher Kimball wears so well.
Every year, I harass my husband. He loves his canned jelly cranberry sauce. He grew up with it. It's what he does. I'm dying for homemade, so I'll make a small batch for myself, and he gets his canned jelly crap. I gotta give him hell for it, you know. It keeps us young.
My son, who is now 16, years ago, wanted spaghetti for Thanksgiving. That's my daughter. And we just decided to let him write the menu every year.
We have a family tradition called pizza at midnight, where everybody stays up late. We watch movies, we play games, and then at midnight we get out all the fixings and we make homemade pizza.
Our untraditional Thanksgiving tradition is to watch a shark movie with our dessert. That includes everything you can imagine from Shark Week, all the Sharknado movies, The Meg 2, and of course, rewatching Jaws.
Cream cheese cookies are a tradition at every Thanksgiving and Christmas in our extended family. And my mother, Corinda, and her niece, Linda, were baking and pressing for so many hours that they were completely exhausted and sick to their stomachs and never wanted to bake again. And for the last 55 plus years, my mother shares this story as we are putting the cookie trays on the dessert table. This has coined the term in our family of cream cheese stories. Family tales that are often funny at someone else's expense. The nieces and in-laws sincerely laugh at these stories, even though they know the punchline, because they know, and we know, that these stories are who we were, who we became, and they honor those that are no longer at the table. All hail the cream cheese cookie.
Thank you to everyone who called and shared a story. Of course, my own Thanksgiving is also filled with traditions. My favorite part is when I listen to a recording of a child's Christmas in Wales read by the author, Dylan Thomas. And so to end this year's special Thanksgiving episode, I leave you with the man himself, Dylan Thomas.
For dinner we had turkey and blazing pudding, and after dinner the uncle sat in front of the fire, loosened all buttons, put their large, moist hands over their watch chains, groaned a little, and slept. Mothers, aunts, and sisters scuttled to and fro, bearing tureens. Aunt Bessie, who had already been frightened twice by a clockwork mouse, whimpered at the sideboard and had some elderberry wine. The dog was sick. Auntie Dossie had to have 3 aspirins, but Auntie Hannah, who liked port, stood in the middle of the snowbound backyard, singing like a big-bosomed thrush.
That's it for this year's Thanksgiving special. To explore Milk Street and everything we have to offer, please go to 177milkstreet.com. There you can become a member and get full access to every recipe, free standard shipping for the Milk Street store, and much more. You can also learn about our latest book, Milk Street Bakes. Plus, we have a complete collection of all of our Thanksgiving recipes at milkstreetradio.com/Thanksgiving. You can also find us on Facebook at Christopher Kimball's Milk Street, on Instagram at 177 Milk Street. We'll be back next week with more food stories and cooking questions. Thanks for listening, and we wish you all a very happy Thanksgiving.
Christopher Kimball's Milk Street Radio is produced by Milk Street in association with GBH. Co-founder Melissa Baldino. Executive producer Annie Sinspa. Senior editor Melissa Allison. Senior producer Sarah Clapp. Associate producer Caroline Davis with production help from Debbie Paddock. Additional editing by Sydney Lewis. Audio mixing by Jay Allison at Atlantic Public Media in Woods Hole, Massachusetts. Theme music by Chubop Crew. Additional music by George Brindle Egloff. Christopher Kimball's Milk Street Radio is distributed by PRX.